Let's see if these little bad girls have laid me anything nice. That's just a fake egg, because they keep eating their own eggs. Pretty sure I found their new oh, hey Chetty, how are you, girl? Would you look at that? The new laying spot. Let's collect these. A little poopy, that's fine. Even though I just got some beautiful eggs, this video is about the overhypedness of backyard chickens and why I still would keep them anyways, and I still do, and I still recommend it. But I do want to talk about it because, you know, here on social media, things can get a little bit hype machined, and I want to present some reality now that I've been keeping hens for about 5 years now, I think. Oh, Chetty, tripping on the grubblies. So the first thing I want to talk about is the cost of eggs, because as my little hennies here devour these grubblies, who sponsored this video, by the way, I'll talk about them a little bit later on. That's probably one of the things you hear a lot about on social media is like, well, you can get your own eggs. And it's like, yes, of course, hens lay eggs. And that is definitely a benefit of having backyard chickens. But there's a couple caveats to it. And one of them would be that you really do have to run the numbers. You got to bake in all the different costs that are associated with hens. Of course, in my case, the cost of the coop was provided. So I have a huge benefit there. If it wasn't, I would not have a coop probably this fancy unless I guess was like independently wealthy or something like that. I would have had a coop probably closer to the one that Jacques has on his channel, which you can see his build out, which cost him about $1,000 to build and a good amount of time, like nights and weekends for at least a couple weeks. So you got to build in that cost. You got to build in the cost of the feed. You have to build in any sort of like accoutrements that you might be adding to the coop. Oh, they really want some more of these. Okay, I'll give you some more. And then when you do that, you realize that egg prices would have to remain pretty high at the grocery store to make it economically viable to keep backyard chickens just for the eggs. Now, what does that say though about the quality of the eggs? It doesn't say anything about the quality. The quality of the eggs is better than even a company like something like Vital Farms, which I think sometimes can get into a little bit of hot water. I would give them some credit for trying to do the most that they can at the scale that they're doing. You know, grocery store pastured eggs from smaller farms. That being said, you know, as a gardener, I have some of the best quality eggs, in my opinion, on planet Earth, because not only are they getting crazy amounts of calcium from something like these grubblies, you know, 50 times more calcium than even mealworms, this is black soldier fly larva, they're getting garden forage very often. In fact, there's a Calibos cabbage sitting right here that they've been picking at that has not only the produce of the cabbage itself, but also has all the different bugs that they're going to find in there. And as we go through season changeover, we'll bring them out into the garden, which is a really fun thing to do. Let's see if I can get Lobster here. Hey, Lobster. Oh, wow, you let me pick you up. Lobster likes to run out there. Oh, not for that long. And you'll do a season changeover and they'll come through and they'll pick through that garden. Chickens are not obligate herbivores or carnivores, but they're sort of designed for an omnivorous diet that's favorable for bugs. They like to eat a bunch of different bugs. And so getting out there in the garden, the egg quality is far better than even a pasture-raised egg that you buy at the grocery store. The companies that do pasture-raised eggs will oftentimes supplement their feed with something like calendula or things that will color the yolk. And there's a very big difference between a yolk being orange because the hen is having an optimal diet and the yolk being orange just because it ate something that makes the yolk orange, even if it's pasture raised. So going on that egg note here you go, Chetty. Egg production will, I wouldn't say fall off a cliff, but it tapers off pretty starkly after about, I would say 3 years at the most. In fact, right now with 5 hens, I'm getting not that many eggs a day, and we're ramping into, I would say, a pretty much prime production years because all of these hens are getting a little bit older. I mean, Butter, Chetty, and Lobster are from my original flock. So these 3 right here are 3 of the 5 of my original flock. And then Cortado and Lav are from my second flock. I had 2 batches of 5 that I raised from day-old chicks. And unfortunately, I've lost half of my total flock of hens. I had 10, I now only have 5 left. And fortunately, I have not lost any of these beautiful girls, but it was quite sad. And I think that's a piece of the equation of raising backyard hens. Unless you're the type to treat them as true livestock, you're not naming them, etc., you are going to lose hens and it's going to be a sad experience. I mean, the first hen I lost, Gucci, a lot of you remember Gucci, my most prized and flamboyant hen, let's say. I remember burying her out in the yard weeping. I was so sad, you know? And as you lose more hens, I guess unfortunately or fortunately, you do sensitize to the reality of it. But that's still part of this journey is living, loving, losing these beautiful creatures. I mean, some of you remember we had big buff Brahma that I had. We lost her very early on. And Rufio, one of my favorite hen of all time, was the one that and this gets me to another thing that's a little bit, not necessarily overhyped, but just something you really have to watch out for when you're caring for hens is predators. Rufio is the only one out of the 4 hens I've lost that I lost to a predator, and it was like a freak accident because I'm sitting in the outdoor run. There's an inside run on this coop as well, and there's a 3-foot predator apron with very heavy duty wire mesh, not chicken wire, but like a hardware cloth 2x3 inch mesh that nothing can get through. Maybe a rat, but a rat can't kill a hen. What happened is there was a tiny little corner that okay, Chetty, you want some more? There was a tiny little corner that an opossum got through and unfortunately just absolutely attacked Rufio and consumed her basically. I mean, it was a total mess to see and very sad. And so you're going to lose hens, you're going to have to be vigilant. I would say a lot of the downsides of predator issues can be mitigated by really setting your coop up properly. And what I mean by that is you don't want to use chicken wire, you want to use heavier duty mesh, and you also absolutely need a predator apron that comes out about 3 feet. So you can see over here, it comes out pretty far so that, you know, if it's like 6 inches away, a skunk or a raccoon or any sort of digger can come under that no problem and get into the indoor run, walk up the stairs, get into the hen house. If you have one that's 3 feet long, they're just not going to go through the effort because they don't know where to begin and they don't know that there's a payoff at the end of it. And so that's just something I would keep in mind. Before we get into the next topic, what have I been feeding these girls this whole time? They're just munching them like crazy. You can see how wild they go for them. These are Grubblies from Grubbly Farms, who are the official chicken feed and supply sponsor here at Epic Gardening. This is the first product I ever tried from Grubblies. The hens obviously love it. It's dehydrated black soldier fly larva, which has dramatically more calcium than mealworms, which is what, you know, a lot of other companies might feed. And that just helps for stronger shells, overall better health. But this is not the only product that we use from Grubblies. Then when you get into the hen house, what we've been doing is we've been going with the Grubbly hemp bedding. So this stuff right here, it's been really good, super absorbent, allows you to utilize that deep litter technique where bedding goes down about 12 to 16 inches and you don't have to clean this out as often. Pairing that with a nice wide wrapped roost bar has been very helpful in keeping maintenance down, smell down, and then of course all this, when it is finally time to change the bedding, comes out here into our composting system, cycles from this one to this one to this one, and then makes its way out into the garden to be used again, which of course then our little hennies will come out and forage in. So it's this beautiful cycle. And then in the egg hutch, like I said, we've got Grubblies everywhere. We've got the hemp nesting pads, nice and thick, nice and absorbent. Sometimes your hens don't want to use the egg hutch, but if they do, we've got that for them. And then inside the indoor run, we have our feeder, and we've been using Grubblies Fresh Pecks for about 4 or 5 years now, the Crumbles edition. So they really like the Crumbles and they get a nice balanced diet this way. Good amount of calcium. It is an absolutely beautiful mix and our hens are eternally happy for it. So like I said, we've been using Grubblies forever. We absolutely love them. Our hens love it. Jacques is a big fan as well. A lot of you who've watched and tried it with the code EPIC using the link in the description, you have also loved it as well. So we have to say thank you to Grubbly Farms for sponsoring this video. And now let's get back to some of the thoughts I have about these beautiful hens. So like I was saying, the thing about having them is they're these great recyclers, or so you are told. The truth is you can't feed them unlimited amounts of garden scraps. Some things they're just not going to like, you know, whatever it is about the actual leaf material of this cauliflower, they don't like it at all. They're just not a fan. And so this is probably going to make its way into the compost eventually. A lot of people will down them for the smell. I find that here's where smell becomes an issue. Chetty's coming in to say hi. Here's where smell becomes an issue. If you start throwing a ton of scraps in your run and they don't eat it and you leave it there, you're going to just have rotting food scraps. That's obviously going to smell, right? Combine that with maybe not raking out or maybe spreading some bedding, etc. in your indoor or outdoor run, you're gonna get the droppings. Anytime you've got moisture, organic matter decaying, maybe too many droppings, you are gonna get a smell, you are gonna start getting flies come in. That's really on you. There's nothing there to eat, Chetty, just a little spider web. That's really on you as the chicken keeper if you're not controlling that. I find that they're not very smelly and they are not very noisy unless there's something going on. Now, the one time I have had a pretty big noise problem is when I was migrating one flock into another. So like I said, I had 5 from day-old chicks in my original batch, and I had another 5 the next year in my secondary batch. And when I moved the pullets from my second batch into this outdoor run at about the 8 to 10 week mark, where they were old enough to kind of survive out here, that was a rough period. Because remember, there's a reason the saying pecking order is a saying that people use when they're determining social hierarchies. It is exactly what's happening. Chetty, what are you doing? You trying to mog the screen right now? What are you doing? Look at her. Anyways, there's a social hierarchy that has to be established, and that can be very rough, and that can be a little bit tough to deal with. I mean, I saw at one point lavender, I don't know what it was, but the hens just did not like lavender for like a good month and a half or 2 months. I think it was when she was a little bit broody and maybe she was molting slightly. And so perhaps she looked a little bit sickly or decrepit or something, but they would chase her down all the time. Lobster would not let her eat. And the same thing happened with butter once. And so that can be a little bit distressing, a little bit sad. These dynamics, these are animals, guys. They're figuring out their order in the flock, and sometimes it is tough to watch. And of course, if it gets out of control, then you can take measures, but a lot of the time you have to let that play out. Okay, a couple more thoughts here. If you are going on vacation or any sort of trip, I find if you've set the coop up really well, it's actually not that big of a deal. Many of you know who've watched some of my other videos of a more personal nature that I do not live here at the homestead anymore. This is more of our test garden, our exploratory garden, our company garden. And the hens, of course, still live here. And we do have some help checking in here and there. And of course, I'll come down on the weekends. But they're not that hard to deal with. The only way they would be is if you don't have your coop set up correctly. So what I have here is a door from Chicken Guard that'll allow them out here at specific hours. So it's like an hour after sunrise, and it'll start closing an hour after sunset, which gives them time to get back inside. I have some cover on this area because we have had a couple hawks dive in. Of course, I have my predator apron, and the second they're inside the run, they are completely safe. Nothing, it's not possible for anything to really get in there besides maybe a mouse or a rat, which I've never really had a problem with. So on vacation, if my watering setup is filled up and clean, and if my food is filled up and clean, as well as the oyster grit and some of the other things that we give them, and I've cleaned the coop out somewhat recently, the chickens are self-sufficient for over a week at a time if I had to. I'm not saying that I do, but if I had to, it could definitely be like that. Now, the other thing I'll say is if you do run into diseases, which I think for me is the problem behind why I've lost some hens in a surprising way. I'm not exactly sure. I think I may have had one egg-bound hen that wasn't caught in time. Of course, one lost to a predator. If you do end up needing to go to a veterinarian for your hens, they're very difficult to find unless you're in maybe a rural area that maybe specializes it. But here where I am in San Diego, it's not like there's a chicken vet down the street. And if there is, it can be as expensive as a cat or a dog, depending on what needs to be done. And so sometimes you kind of have to think about oh, you got a little peck right there. Lobster, going for it. Sometimes you need to think about like, where am I going to put the line on how much I'm going to care for the hens if I'm losing one that's an aged hen to a disease that like technically maybe there's like a surgery that could be done or something. Like you really have to put that in your own hierarchy of where you're going to spend and where you're not going to spend. And so in my case, I would always have hens. I would always have hens in the future. I think they're such a beautiful addition to the life of a homestead and a garden space. I like having living things around me. Obviously, I've got a garden, I have my fish. Animals are part of that. And I'm going to put up with, so to speak, some of the things that maybe I don't like so much about having the hens because I find that the benefits far outweigh the costs. And of course, if you want to see the benefit, you can check out this video right here. Again, thank you to Grubly for being our official chicken sponsor. Use code EPIC down below. They've been munching on these the whole video, guys. That's proof enough right there. I'll see you on the next one. Good luck in the garden and keep on growing.